Today, we're going to present you the new unfoldings of the retail downfall, with several businesses struggling to stay afloat during this groundbreaking economic meltdown. The retail apocalypse has spread out so fast that the traditional Black Friday and holiday shopping are now jeopardized. Hundreds of thousands of retail store closures are happening around the country, and more than half of them won't ever resume their activities. We're going to analyze a recent study that indicated that over 60% of the business closures that occurred so far turned out to be permanent, and all of these jobs were lost for good. If you've been keeping up with us, a while ago we reported how the generalized bankruptcy that's taking place all over the country will only add pressure to the giant debt bubble that America has created. Will that bubble burst by the end of the year? Let's examine together. Without further ado, let's jump into this video, and please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. The aftermath of the health crisis is accelerating the deterioration of the economy at a pace never witnessed before in all American history, leaving deep economic scarring in several sectors, and every attempt to rescue it haven't come without major consequences. The downturn, boosted by the outbreak, has made the economy fall into a liquidity trap, in which interest rates will potentially be maintained on the zero lower bound until 2023. That is to say, the monetary policy is likely to face further challenges on stimulating the real economy, having to do much more than artificially inflating asset prices. While the federal government keeps pumping one fiscal injection after the other into the real economy, forging a volatile and artificial growth, the latest gap in fiscal support, 48 days now, has sent the economy into another meltdown, with retailers failing to manage their way through the crisis and online spending rates nearing zero. Comparing to the prominent reopening background of other countries, the U.S. rates were at the very least disappointing. In the retail sector, the observed rise was merely 0.6%. According to Bloomberg, apart from food service and drinking places, 4.7%, all the remaining retail sectors either presented a derisory growth or dropped below zero. Electronics and appliance stores recorded a 0.8% upswing, the same as health and personal care, while gasoline stations recorded the marginal rates of 0.4%. On the other hand, paradoxically, food and beverage stores had seen a decrease of minus 1.2% in their sales. Sporting goods and bookstores noted a minus 5.7% fall, and general merchandise stores minus 0.4%. Online shopping sales remained unchanged, meaning that they flatlined and their growth is now close to 0%. Furthermore, the deep economic disruption goes beyond the deterioration in the labor market, with more and more businesses to open doors again. A recent report published by Yelp revealed that up until August 31st, over 150,000 businesses have closed on the platform, marking a 23% increase since mid-July. The report also pointed out an increase of almost 100,000 permanent business closures over the past 6 months, which indicates that 60% of closed businesses will never reopen again. The report says, as of August 31st, 163,735 total U.S. businesses on Yelp have closed since the beginning of the sanitary crisis, observed as March the 1st. And that's a 23% increase since July the 10th. In the wake of the virus-related cases increasing and local restrictions continuing to change in many states, it's possible to see both permanent and temporary closures rise across the nation, with 60% of those closed businesses not reopening. 97,966 permanently closed, as we can observe in this chart. Yelp's analysis also highlights that restaurants, shopping, retail, and beauty and spas have been harmed the most, with temporary and permanent closures since March, as shown in this chart. It also affirmed that the restaurant industry continues to be one of the most impacted, with a mounting number of closures, summing 32,109 closures, with 19,590 of these business closures indicated to be permanent, 61% rate. Breakfast and brunch restaurants, burger joints, sandwich shops, dessert places, and Mexican restaurants are among the types of restaurants with the highest rate of business closures. Foods that work well for delivery and takeout have been able to keep their closure rates lower than others, including pizza places, delis, food trucks, bakeries, and coffee shops, the report outlined. By contrast, the differences in operational organizing and inherent features of the bars and nightlife sector has made this industry, considered to be 6 times smaller than restaurants, to be hit particularly hard, having an extraordinary high closure rate, with an increasing percentage of closures being permanent. As Yelp registered, by the end of August, there were 6,451 total business closures, of which 3,499 were permanently closed, meaning 54% of the total so far, and also documenting that the share of permanent closures within bars and nightlife have increased by 10% since their economic average report in July. However, CNBC affirmed the damage in this industry to be subtly higher according to their records, maintaining that throughout the past 6 months, restaurants, bars, and nightlife venues have been affected the most by the restrictions brought on by the virus outbreak, signaling that 32,109 restaurants have closed. Thereby, the number of restaurants forced to permanently close is slightly above Yelp's total average, at 61%, says the paper. Following closely behind the restaurant rates is retail and shopping, with a total of 30,374 business closures, in which 58% or 17,503 are permanent. Just as bars and nightlife, the share of permanent closures increased by 10% since July. In this chart, we can notice that both men and women's clothing, as well as home decor, have the highest rate of business closures. Meanwhile, the beauty industry has witnessed a 22% rise in closures since July, which configures in 16,585 closures. Over 42% of all closed businesses in the beauty industry will never open doors again, meaning that more than 7,000 beauty stores are out of the market, which sets a substantial 43% expansion since July, when it was reported that 4,897 of all closures in the beauty industry were permanent. In addition, the fitness industry has faced a 23% heightening in closures since July, totaling 6,024 closures, 2,616 of which are permanent. Even though some professional services such as roofing, landscaping, accountants, and lawyers have experienced smaller declines, the economic collapse had apocalyptic effects nationally. In some places, without even leaving a margin for some sort of recovery, but running like an avalanche over many businesses that will never be able to stand up again. Alternatively, Yelp data has shown that closure rates have been varying across the country, with bigger states and metros having higher rents and more restrictive local operations for small businesses, which resulted in bigger losses. The same happened to businesses that were more closely linked to physical locations that needed crowds of consumers to obtain a viable profit margin. Moreover, the report explained that in states with widespread business closures, the economic struggle seems to be combined with soaring unemployment rates, as it states that Hawaii, California, and Nevada have the highest rate of total closures and permanent closures. They're also the 3 states with the highest unemployment rates, and among the biggest states for tourism. The states with the most closures are home to the hardest hit metros: Las Vegas in Nevada, Honolulu in Hawaii, and several of the largest California urban areas are among the metro areas with the highest total closure and permanent closure rates: San Diego, San Francisco, San Jose, Los Angeles, and others, with roughly 20 businesses per thousand temporarily or permanently closing their doors since March the 1st. Yelp's Vice President of Data Science, Justin Norman, told CNBC that, overall, Yelp's data shows that business closures have continued to rise, with a 34% increase in permanent closures since their last report in mid-July. The paper then evaluated these data as a Main Street demonstration that the impacts of the economic meltdown prompted up by the global health outbreak are far from easing, reviewing that many states and areas of business may not see a recovery at any time soon. It is important to remember the retail downfall has started before the sanitary crisis arrived on American soil. Since 2019, a tidal wave of retail bankruptcies have pushed over 100,000 stores out of the market. And after the 2020 unfoldings, many of these businesses expected to be rescued by the markets, but are now coping with total liquidation. The mandatory lockdown, coupled with high debt loads and the declining amount of customers, have acted as a knockout punch for traditional retail store operations. It's only natural that the future of this industry doesn't look any more promising. With such aggregating factors that won't cease to push retailers further down, imagining a Black Friday deals for Christmas holiday shopping seems remarkably distant. Many big retailers already have confirmed they'll remain closed during the holiday season, whereas the ones that will keep functioning will only be liquidating their stock so they can close for good. Target already determined that stores will be closed on Thanksgiving Day, so have Walmart, and many others are expected to follow the move. Actually, Home Depot has announced they will not have Black Friday in 2020. Instead, they're affirming to spread out the holiday sales longer throughout the selling season. On the other hand, we have the brands that were usually known as big Black Friday players, and now they are liquidating. For instance, Pier 1 Imports chain is selling off their stocks to shut activities forever. The 112-year-old Stein Mart is liquidating its entire brand with over 270 stores, while the 194-year-old Lord & Taylor is liquidating all 38 of their stores, traditionally considered to be mall anchor stores, which means that when stores like these close, it usually triggers a chain effect that is likely to lead not only to the death of other brands, but also the entire mall ecosystem. Also, Sears Holdings, which has been in the death spiral since 2007, will be taking its last breaths during the coming season, liquidating its remaining 60 stores. With all that said, some major concerns are being raised, the first of which is that there will be another spike in jobless claims very soon, even though the numbers don't accurately portray it, since the U.S. Labor Department decided to change how the rates are calculated. Strategists have also been discussing that it would be in the company's best interest to automate many of the services and operations that are now conducted by people, which means that even if these companies are saved by investors in the financial markets, millions of people will remain in unemployment, losing their posts to robots. Besides, this major retail slump has shown that fiscal and monetary policies are obtaining diminishing returns that will likely result in a recovery that does not resemble a V. In fact, the path to a proper recovery could take years ahead, especially considering that the fiscal cliff that is finally appearing up in economic data will only get deeper as consumer spending declines and more closures take place. We are at the very verge of a breaking point because all factors interfere with each other and everything, literally everything, is crumbling down. America will soon be facing its reckoning day. Are you ready?